Hello, everybody. How's it going? This is Justin Rubin, and I'm doing a quick two-player special review for the game Obsession. And I will be including in my discussion the expansion uh, upstairs, downstairs. And you might be wondering why, when starting a review like this, I have two other games on the table, Monster Lands and Scythe. I have the box over there. I'm not bringing the whole thing over here. This is just one of the box expansions I used to hold paints in. So, and here's Obsession, of course. Now, I may look like Santa Claus these days to some people, but maybe I'm filled also with a little bit of humbug regarding this game, but not entirely. So we can get into it in a second here. So why do I have these other two board games here, boxes, for different reasons. One is, and no pun intended here, based on the subject of obsession, but the subject of great expectations. So my wife had great expectations regarding Obsession, heard so many really good things. It has an enormously good rating on Board Game Geek, and its weight seems to be in our goal zone of that 3.5 kind of thing out of 5 in terms of complexity level that we enjoy. Great expectations for me with board games has become a real sort of niggling trait that I always am reticent when there's a lot of talk about a game, because many times that builds something up and then sometimes it doesn't live up to what I feel was everyone's raving about a game. That's why I bring up Scythe. Scythe, which was one of the first games we got years ago when we really were getting seriously into this hobby. I remember it was like, better than sliced bread and everything like this. So we finally got it to the table, and I was like, huh, that's good, and I'm probably still around a 7 on Scythe, even with expansions and all the things. And it's fun and a lot of thinking, but also it's Eurotrash kind of game. Well, not Eurotrash, Ameritrash. Or maybe there is something new. Maybe there's something new. Maybe I slipped up there and it actually means something. Eurotrash game. The high randomness of what cards you're going to draw after doing all of this high complex thinking and planning out. And again, this is for some different people have different tastes in what they want in games. For me, whenever there is a high degree of card, dice rolling and cards that what you get kind of thing. When it's a long game, that's when it kind of starts to decrease in interest for me. Now, what do I bring in? So Scythe, I don't love, like. Painted all the guys, have a good time with it. We'll always bring it out. It's a little bit long, slow start to the game, but definitely didn't live up to the expectations and people's raving about the game. Next up, a game that is maybe not as well known, but again, got a lot of good reviews, game called Monster Lands, and we've played it a bunch of times, and we just played it a couple more times recently, because this is one of those games, and I'll put this in a different type of category. The category is, I really like everything I'm doing except something. I like everything about Monster Lands and the build-up, and you're getting your guy and getting weapons and planning out where you're going to go, and then ultimately you chuck dice. And for a long game that could be 2 to 3 hours long, where especially early in the game, that's my issue with Monster Lands. I think about this game all the time, is that I like so many things about it, but I think there's so many things that I'd like to fix about it more to make it more interesting. That the decisions you're making have an impact. That there's some kind of an upscale into what you're doing. That's a whole other topic. Monster Lands. I have a video about that. Like many things about the game, but ultimately, probably too many issues with the game as well, especially for the duration. And that's where we get with Obsession. And again, this is only a 2-player review. And Obsession, the issue for me with the game is that it seems like two different games going on. The game of strategizing, planning out, tactically figuring out what you're going to do based upon the situation, and then ultimately a lot of card draws and random tiles that come out, and you're not sure. The thing that I come up with, we've played this game now 8 times. We've done every variation that's listed in the book. We've done games, half of the games with the upstairs, downstairs, the added characters, and so forth. The issue for me is that I love everything that I'm doing. And my wife also loves everything that we're doing in the game, planning out, which, I'm not going to go into the rules, obviously, for this video, but which servants are going to be ready, when are you going to use them, when are going to come back, based upon what characters that you have available to you, which, you have your family members and you have the various different types of guests and the tiles that you want to flip at the certain times and so forth. And all of that planning is really, really interesting. And then there's this lots of randomness that's thrown into the mix, where at the end of the game, especially with the strange that you have the 4 seasons and the last one, it's all of the seasons combined. So, it's based on what card is drawn, shows who's going to get those extra 12 points or more at the end of the last season. That randomness really makes me wonder, at the end of the game, did I really do better than my wife in winning? Did she really do better than me in winning? I'm not so sure. I almost feel like like a play that you know the end of. I like the whole thing, and then I'd rather just get up and walk out at the very end rather than go through the whole thing of, what's who did better, because I'm not sure if who did better is represented in the scores. I feel that I drew a couple of bad characters for what I have. I don't have enough women for the tiles that I have. Now the expansion, I think, is a must. I think it's a must, and it repairs a lot of the random issues that occur in here. Whereas you can get I could use the cook if I have too many high prestigious characters that I just don't have that reputation for yet. I could use the cook and use her at the round that I want to and with the tile to get things. Or the useful man if I have a tile that I have that I'm just not at the reputation and I want to bring it down a notch. If I want more choice in the cards I'm taking, with the pink female character, head housemaid, I think it's called. That's a whole other issue, is all the terminology for all the various characters. And now, in upstairs, downstairs, also there's this other board called Tableau. You could play the game at a different way, where you're not having the seasons, you're just playing rounds, and only certain things score and certain things don't score. So it takes a lot of the randomness out. But I felt it also didn't have some of the panache that the regular game has. Then you could play either the regular game or the long game. The long game seems a little bit too long, in the sense that we both felt like we were doing everything we could, and the cards, the objectives weren't really that relevant because we could do them all basically. Whereas the short game feels a little bit short. The various variations, I don't like the one with the random where you're rolling a die to see when the event cards are going to come out and tell you, what type of tiles the Fairchild family is going to want the most. I didn't like that one. It's almost, I feel like all the various, now upstairs and downstairs, I almost feel like that, like this needed to be fixed. So this fixes this to a certain extent. And all of the variants between them, that there's some game in there, but it hasn't quite been decided upon. And that's how there's a difference between variants where you want to play a more difficult game, or this just seemed like, well, there's a lot of different ways of playing the same game, almost as if, like, did the designer figure out which one was the best, or the one that was the most balanced or the most fair, or otherwise it just seems like when you go on board game, people just have like, oh, we do it this way, a lot, almost like house rules. And that's why I kind of feel with the game. It's very floppy. It's not tight enough. Now, I like Euro games more than Ameritrash games, and this seems a little bit somewhere in that Scythe type of thing, with a little bit more randomness than that, of course. So maybe it's just not my cup of tea. Now, with 2 players, a typical game, the long game probably is about 2 hours plus, with thinking about what you want to do. And that's, again, In a long game, I don't mind the randomness, of course, when there's a much shorter game, half-hour game or something like that, and like Canvas or something like that, where what comes out, and I'll just deal with it, and think. But when it's so involved and you're trying to do so many things over a long stretch of time, I just felt that there was another developmental step that was missing in the process here that draws it down for me. I do want to play this though with more people. I want to try this with especially a higher count, like 4 and 5, because we have all of those different families. Now, there's definitely, for those of you that are getting maybe all of the boxes, if you have the second edition, some of them seem like to have just redundant material in them, like gobs of corrected cards that they were already corrected here. So I was like, oh, what's this? Why did we get this thing? Some extra tiles which are nice, and some cards, and I think tiles that were designed by fans. And maybe it's a different type of game. Maybe I'm just coming to this like totally wrong, that this is more like a community type game where people contribute to it in a different way. But and like having all of these boxes, so there's a high production. The components are great and everything like that, but like having all of these boxes and all of these families, and they're basically all doing the same thing. It's just different photographs on them. Seemed like, well, there's a lot of you're making up for something that's not that unique into these special families where someone gets $300. Why do I need a whole separate box? It could have been just the set of tiles. It's almost as if you were playing Dominion and each player gets their own particular estates, right? Or their own particular coppers and so forth. The family cards themselves all do the same thing. So that's not really asymmetrical there. Everyone starts off with just a little bit of a benefit. So do they really need 5 different boxes for this and different colors? I mean, it's definitely, I would say, almost on the overproduced side of things. But that being said, there's enough about the game that I do like, and just almost feel like with Monsterlands, I feel like that I want a different rule set that fixes all the problems so that everything that's in the box works well. That's what I feel with Obsession, and even with Upstairs Downstairs, that I like everything that's in the box, but it just doesn't fit with me as best as possible. But we do have some house rules that I think have fixed some of the things for us as a pair. And going forward, we'll see what it's like when we play with more players. Right now, I'm probably around a 6 out of 10 on the game. And so that's where it's at. So do I recommend it for 2 players? Maybe, depending on your particular, your bravery for dealing with lots of randomness that's going to be occurring in the game. I probably like the Tableau version more than the standard version, but my wife doesn't like that one as much. So I'll play the regular version, but maybe with just some changes. So those are just my thoughts. Have a very good new year, everybody, and I will speak to you soon. I'll end the stream.